I have a great new product for you. It's an exceptional oil. It's 250 new francs.
She's far too funky to be any harm. She don't make sense unless you've known her from the start. I've seen into her eyes through the color of her hair. Some say the lights are on, but nobody's there. Over and over, she's first on the scene, looking hotter than a magazine. Let me go up, let me go down, take it to the side, all over town, make me feel free.
It's amazing. It's a wonderful event. The quality of the cars taking part is incredible. And at the same time, the driving is very serious on the track. The whole circuit is only open once or twice a year. Seeing all these cars that I dreamt about when I was a kid, it's really a wonderful feeling. It's fascinating to be here. It's like a great toy collection. It's not just about the past. We're so happy to see these cars here. They have been restored and they're in excellent condition.
It's a whole festival. It's like the Woodstock of motor racing.
We had been waiting for this event since 2012, Le Mans Classic's 7th edition of one of the most beautiful and largest competitions in the world of historic cars. Le Mans Classic is also a unique race running over 24 hours on the great circuit of the 24 Hours of Le Mans. The paddock has donned a vintage look during the first week of July. The technical checks give drivers and teams an opportunity to meet up in this legendary paddock. The place is bustling with activity. The cars are parked in 6 separate areas depending on the year that the vehicle originally took part in the 24 hours. It's an incredible collection. Imagine the pre-war Bentleys alongside sublime Jaguar C of the post-war era. A little bit further, Le Mans Classic revived the 1960s match between Ferrari and Ford, not to mention a long line of winning Porsche, ready to get back on the French track for a 24-hour challenge. In just a few steps, we journey through the history of the largest, most beautiful endurance race in the world. This is Le Mans Classic. Le Mans Classic is also a serious competition where safety comes first, both for drivers and for onlookers. All the security equipment is checked thoroughly during the scrutineerings. Le Mans Classic is the brainchild of Patrick Peter, who launched the event in 2002. The biggest challenge he encountered was to be able to close the major roads around the circuit to do a full loop. The only other time this happens during the year is during the modern 24 hours competition. But Patrick Peter is a tenacious man who follows things through. With the active support of the Automobile Club de l'Ouest, Le Mans Classic has become, in 12 years and 6 editions, the largest gathering of vintage cars in mainland Europe. a prestigious event that keeps improving its formula over time. In the early days, Le Mans Classic counted just a few thousand spectators. In 2012, visitors' figures passed the 100,000 bar, while in 2014, a whopping 110,000 enthusiasts attended the event, undeterred by the changing weather. We tried to organize a beautiful race and to give access to the cars for the public. That's really important because on modern races it's very frustrating not to be able to see the cars from up close. The owners are very happy to talk about their cars and their history, and of course there are a lot of additional activities going on. The activities include a high-end official opening dinner held in the elegant gardens of the Cistercian Les Beaux Abbey. Guess what the theme of the evening was? Back on the track on Friday early afternoon, the skies are looking threateningly grey when the first cars enter the circuit. Indeed, these are the very first cars that have ever taken part in the 24 hours. The idea of holding an endurance contest first emerged in 1923 on this circuit located on the outskirts of Le Mans. During the 20s, a real shift takes place. From exclusive, innovative objects reserved to a happy few, cars become consumer goods that will change the history of mankind. Very quickly, the basic idea of creating a contest of endurance, convenience, and durability turns into a speed competition. Very soon, the cars morph into racing vehicles designed to go faster and faster until the beginning of World War II. Plateau 1, or Grid 1 of Le Mans Classic, brings together cars from this very special period. During and after the war, the sector will go through an impressive period of technical and industrial innovation. For proof, just look at the cars in Plateau 2, built between 1949 and 56. Their design is completely different from that of the pre-war machines, both in terms of aesthetics and in terms of mechanics. Carlos Tavares, CEO of PSA Peugeot Citroën, is impressed by the display of beauty and technology. He takes part in Le Mans Classic as a driver, but also as a fan of automobile history. The most striking thing here is that we have beautiful objects, invaluable cars that have been prepared and sometimes rebuilt with a painstaking attention to detail. And the drivers that use this car understand this complexity. They love mechanics, they understand that automobile design is like art. I think in our society it's sometimes hard to admit it, but I believe that cars are artworks in terms of style, of mechanics and development. We have to acknowledge that, and everybody here understands this. The turn of the 60s is also an important period in the history of the automobile industry and in the history of the 24 hours in particular. Sports cars go from works of art to state-of-the-art machines. Prototypes developed especially for the competition start to appear on the track. In 1957, Hawthorne reaches 200 km/h on a Jaguar D. Now the world's best drivers drive factory cars at the 24 hours. This onboard camera footage gives us a better feel for what it means to drive these four-wheeled artworks like Haupten Zweifler on a Maserati 250S. It's true, the artistic component is very important to me. The cars are not just about technology. They are also very pleasing to the eye. We can see it in cars design as well as in watchmaking. The emotion is revealed by the architecture of the product, be it a car or a watch. There's a real strong link between the two. The pinnacle of automotive art in the 60s is undoubtedly the work of Italian manufacturer Ferrari. At Le Mans Classic, the most prestigious and the least common Ferrari 250 were on display. At the initiative of famous Ferrari collector Brandon Wang, this is a traveling museum that graced the paddock before taking the road to Maranello in Italy. The 250 Tornano a Casa is the theme of this exceptional rally that paraded on the track. A chance to admire the 20 most beautiful Ferrari 250 in the world, no less than 3 GTOs, an exceptional GT California, as well as the 250 Testarossa, the winning car in Le Mans in 58, 60 and 61. Ferrari reigns unchallenged from 1962 to 65. This period corresponds to Le Mans Classic's Plateau 4. Ford becomes a fierce rival for Ferrari with its prototype developed with Lola, the GT40. This car will be the weapon that takes Ferrari down from its throne, a car that has made history. Emanuele Pirro, 5-time Le Mans winner, knows very well the history of this race that means so much to him personally, and he would not miss Le Mans Classic for anything in the world.
La storia mi è sempre piaciuta. Corro con le macchine storiche già da quasi
I've always
20
been
anni
fascinated by history.
perché
I've been
c'è un
riding
grande
old cars for
rispetto
20
per
years,
quello che è successo
and I have
in
huge
passato,
respect for
per i
these
piloti,
objects that have made
per
history.
la tecnologia.
For the cars, for the
E
technology.
poi guidare le macchine
And of course, it's
che
a
hanno,
pleasure to
come
drive
dire,
cars that
una
have personality.
Adesso le macchine sono tanto performanti,
Nowadays,
tanto perfette,
cars are
ma
powerful.
forse non
They're
hanno la
almost perfect, but they do not have the
personalità
personality of these historic
È
cars.
quasi come ritornare un po' indietro nel passato, vivere un sogno. Mi piace,
Every time
mi
it's
piace
like a
veramente
dream,
tanto.
taking me back in
Allora,
time.
da
I
una
really,
parte
really
mi
like
piace
it.
il modo di guidare queste macchine in drift.
On one hand, I
per
love this
diverse-
kind of driving, but
però
on the
mi
other
manca
hand,
quel-
I miss the feeling of
quel
being able
feeling di
to
andare a cercare
get the last
il
little tenth of a
100%
second,
che
because
qui non si può
out of
fare,
respect for the
bisogna
cars
sempre
and for
tenere un po' di
safety reasons, we
margine
have to be very
di
careful with the
sicurezza per
cars.
rispettare le macchine, se stessi e gli altri.
The period from 1966 to 71, Plateau 5 of Le Mans Classic, includes many Lola T70, the most powerful cars in the current historical races. But at the time, Ford dominates the competition, and Porsche is gaining momentum with its 906, 907, 908 and 910. Jürgen Barth was part of the Porsche adventure in Le Mans this year, driving a 907 Longtail. I came to enjoy myself and of course to show the techniques of the day. This car had a small 3-liter engine but already reached 300 kilometers per hour at the time. The Longtail was a tremendous technological innovation, and these cars are here in Le Mans. Porsche doesn't manage to cling the victory with its small engine prototypes, so in Stuttgart the brand decides to design a monster engine, 12 cylinders and 6 liters. In 1970, the 917 appears in Le Mans, where Hermann and Atwood snatched the gold medal. 1 year later, Helmut Marko and the young Dutchman Gijs van Lennep add a knot to the 917 record. Van Lennep was at Le Mans Classic this year. He recalls this 1971 victory as a real miracle.
In 1971, when we won with the number 22, the Martini car, we had the magnesium chassis. We didn't know, because you know that burns very well, but it was very light. But I heard about 2 years ago, so that's more than 40 years ago, Willy Kauser, he told me. He said, you know, we tested it in Weissach, and after 3 or 4 hours, you'll get little cracks in the magnesium. So, oh, it's a pity for Marco and for Lennep, they will never finish. Well, all the others dropped out or had problems, and we finished. So you never know, you know.
History repeats itself in 1976 when Van Lennep wins again on a Porsche 936 together with Jackie X. To this day, he remains the only Dutch driver to have won at Le Mans. The winning 936 is the first turbo car to win Le Mans. The modern period presented at Le Mans Classic runs from 1972 to 79. At this time, the regulations favor a smaller engine, so these start to become stronger and more popular. It's also the advent of turbo engines. We've just taken a walk through the history of the 24 hours on the track, but Le Mans Classic also gives us a chance to do some time traveling in the paddock itself. Modern vehicles are not allowed in. The gendarmerie is keeping a close watch on anybody who tries to break the rules. Strolling around the paddock at Le Mans Classic is a real treat, one that can be shared between different generations, as there is so much to discover. The exhibition dedicated to French master bodybuilders is a must-see of this 2014 edition. 16 exceptional cars unveil their unique charms on the village green. No wonder that the French Federation of Vintage Vehicles is lobbying to include automobile bodywork on the UNESCO World Heritage List. Visiting the exhibition, we realize how these craftsmen of the pre-war period were also true exceptional artists. Another exhibition is dedicated to the technological breakthroughs that the industry owes to the incentive of the 24 hours competition, such as the fog lamps that appeared in 1926 on the Lorraine Dietrich, the streamlined wheels dating back to 1937 by Stannard and Walker, or disc brake that Jaguar introduced in its Type D. In a nearby exhibition, visitors can admire the 28 chassis selected for Le Mans Heritage Club, a stage competition to revive the high-speed memories of the time. And all these cars have been captured in the Virage photo studio. The cars of Le Mans Heritage Club also took part in the parade on the circuit. All of them are in perfect working conditions. In fact, this was one of the eligibility criteria to run for the prize.
Il y a des critères d'état, effectivement, si la voiture...
There are criteria in terms of the state of the car. The body has to be in a good state. If part of it has been rebuilt, if part of the engine have been changed, even if the historic continuity is respected, the car will earn less points. Of course, some cars are extraordinary because they are a project designed by one man, for example. This BRM uses a helicopter technology designed especially by Rover for Le Mans. In '63, it would have come in 8th position, but it was not part of the main competition. In '65, it came 10th overall, so it was really an interesting technology and a functional one. Some big drivers like Jackie Stewart even competed with this car. In the end, this BRM wins the Le Mans Heritage Club 2014 contest. There are several ways to take part in Le Mans Classic, not only on the track as a driver or as a spectator in the stands, but also as a car owner, as long as you are a member of a club. This year, about 8,500 club vehicles gathered on the lawn of the Bugatti circuit. Le Mans Classic gives us the possibility to have a big reunion in one single place, to meet our members, to ride on the circuit. It's a wonderful experience. Of course, most manufacturers give their fans a special treatment, just like BMW, which offered an exhibition of its most iconic cars in the middle of the Village Club. Porsche put together the most impressive reunion. Maybe this is because the German brand has returned to the 24 hours in June. Whatever the reason, a hoping 1,000 Porsche flocked to Le Mans, and the Porsche 911 remains the benchmark for all car lovers. A shared passion, that's indeed what brings all these people together, and the rain showers certainly do not discourage these lovers of fine mechanics. We've all dreamed of doing this when we were kids. It is possible to take part in Le Mans Classic for children between 7 and 13 years old. The little Big Mont makes this dream come true. The presidents of the Automobile Club de l'Ouest and the International Automobile Federation are both present on the starting grid. Driving junior-sized replicas, the children enjoy an exclusive lap on the Bugatti circuit. All the junior drivers are focused on their task. A few minutes before the start, the race director enters the track.
I'm here because of this exciting Le Mans meet. I think it's really fun. I get to start the kids to my first time being at a racetrack, and I run fast, but to see some fast cars and starting the kids race today, it's really an honor for me.
As a kid, would you have liked to do something like this?
As a kid, every kid would love to do something like this. Of course, I even want to take off my shoes and go and try right now.
In true Le Mans style, the 70 competitors rush at breakneck speed. The trajectories are not always very accurate, but the enthusiasm is certainly here. But be careful not to get too distracted when approaching the first quick curve of the circuit. After the wonderful children's toys, here are some toys for grown-ups. It is 4:30 p.m. and the cars from Plateau 1, built between 1923 and 39, are getting ready to follow the starting instructions of the race director. FIA President Jean Todt would not miss the start of Le Mans Classic. This expert can't get enough of this fine display, a true living museum.
Bon, messieurs les propriétaires, vous savez ce qu'il vous reste à faire. Sébastien Loeb, mesdames et messieurs!
This year, Sébastien Loeb is giving the starting signal of Le Mans Classic in the presence of Pierre Fillon, president of the Automobile Club de l'Ouest and organizer of the 24 Hours. The ACO is one of the oldest car clubs in France, and for President Fillon, Le Mans Classic has become a key event in the calendar. At 5 p.m. the race is finally on. According to Le Mans tradition, the drivers run across the track to reach their vehicles and jump for a 24-hour race against the clock. Of course, at Le Mans Classic, it's impossible to accommodate 450 competitors for a whole 24 hours under the same category. For this reason, the 6 different grids will take turns on the track, with 3 races of 45 minutes each, spread over the 24 hours. Each race includes a mandatory pit stop of 1 minute 30. The cars in Plateau 1 are not easy to drive, and some drivers even push the envelope to really put themselves into the shoes of early 20th century competitors.
Nous sommes venus par la route.
We drove the car all the way from home. Of course, the car was prepared in England beforehand, but we did it the old-school way. We didn't use a truck or anything like that to transport it. The drivers were not as fast as we are now because the cars have been updated. All the materials we use now are better performing and more durable than what they used at the time. But Bentley is just unbreakable. Bentley, BMW, Aston Martin, Talbot, Delay, Riley, Bugatti, Samson, Lagonda, these are just a few of the well-known brands competing in Grid 1. now time for Plateau 2, which also enjoys a typical Le Mans style start. The cars range from 1949 to 56. Let's go for 45 minutes of racing on the complete 24-hour circuit. The iconic models of the time are the Maserati A6 GCS and 300S, XK Jaguars, the Porsche 356, the Mercedes 300 SL, Aston Martin DB203, as well as the first Lotus. And there is one particular car that made history on this very circuit decades ago, the Jaguar C. Manufactured between 1951 and 53, the C is on paper a 120 XK developed especially for racing. In reality, apart from the six-cylinder engine of its big sister, with a tubular chassis designed for racing and covered with an aerodynamic body. Type C won Le Mans in 1951 and 53. That second win is also historic because it's the first victory of a car equipped with disc brakes. Only 53 Jaguars of this type were ever built. The estimated value is currently around €2 million for the lesser known ones, and the sky's the limit for the most wanted models. The car's most singular features are a recognizable rear fin and the absence of grille. The Type D takes over from the C in 1955 and wins Le Mans 3 years in a row. Many of these expensive jewels, dear to Sir William Lyons, were the stars of the show in Plateaus 2 and 3. Let us now put the spotlight on two other essential cars of the post-war era, the Porsche 356, the first model to grace the 24 hours runway, and the AC Bristol with her little 6-cylinder, 2-liter engine, the forerunner of Carroll Shelby's AC Cobra less than 10 years later. Time for a little retail therapy. See you in the middle of the Bugatti circuit for the Art Curial auction. What I find interesting about this Jaguar E is that the leather seats are original. You can see they are a bit used, exactly like Englishmen like them. This convertible Jaguar E was put on sale for €80,000 with no minimum reserve price. The historic cars market seems to be flourishing, with 82% of the auction lots finding happy buyers at Le Mans Classic. For the drivers and buyers, this is like a giant toy shop. We can only hope that they will follow their heart and purchase one of them. Of course, that's what we strive for. We are here to defend the interests of our sellers. The buyers are always free to raise their finger and stop raising the price whenever they want. It's part of the show. A show led by Master Hervé Poulain, who celebrated his 50-year career as an old car specialist.
On adjuge à 11 000. Adjugé 11 000.
The sun is slowly setting down where the Plateau 4 competitors are getting ready to hit the track. The transition from day to night is always difficult to manage during 24-hour races. When the light fades, the points of reference for braking are different, and when the temperature decreases, the car's behavior also changes. In short, the Plateau 4 drivers have to be very careful. During this round, we've seen quite a few yellow flags and safety cars on the track, but thankfully, no serious incidents were reported. It is now past 11 p.m. The stands are still packed when the competitors of Grade 5, which includes cars from 1966 to 71, are starting their race. Behind the scenes, the choreography of driver swaps continues, with famous drivers and anonymous ones taking turns behind the steering wheels. Of course, for some competitors, Le Mans Classic ends prematurely because of unfortunate mechanical failures or vehicles leaving the track unexpectedly. It is most definitely a serious sports event, but thankfully most of the damage was undone by the mechanics during the breaks between the different races. It is now pitch dark in Le Mans, time for a drive-in movie session. The films selected are related to historic cars or racing, such as Polanski's Weekend of a Champion or A Man and a Woman by Claude Lelouch. At 12:30 a.m., the most recent racing cars are taking center stage. The 1970s cars run the show, as well as the young drivers who competed on these splendid prototypes at the time. On the starting line, we come across Jean Ragnotti. The French driver remains bright and zippy on board his Renault Alpine A442. Renault has insisted that we drive the exact same car as in 1978, with the same gear ratios. But since then, the track's design has changed. Now the gear ratios are too long, so we are not as competitive as we were at the time. And now our opponents have changed the gear ratios in the meantime. So we know we can't really win the competition, but reaching the 7th or 8th position, that would be an excellent result. Jeannot is clearly here to race for real, and he is not alone. The pack rushes on a dry track, but under a cloudy sky. In Plateau 6, slick tires are allowed, so drivers have to play strategically. Slick racing tires appeared in 1967 in the 24 Hours of Le Mans. At Le Mans Classic, this kind of tires is allowed for the cars of Grade 6, but during the night the drivers decide not to take risks. It's a wise decision, as they all had to contend with severe thunderstorms. The race director decided to use the safety car during the first race of Grade 6 to keep everyone on the track. The thunderstorms keep raging during the night. All Le Mans Classic participants will experience the joy of driving under the rain at night on this mythical track. Imagine doing this on an open car with no windshield. But the drivers play the game. After all, rain is part of Le Mans history. Very few battles were ever fought on a dry track on this circuit. In the second round, the teams refine their strategies. To win one of the Le Mans Classic categories, drivers must show not only their endurance but also their reliability. The rankings are only made known after 3 races for each plateau by adding up the results of each round. A clever calculation that will determine one individual winner per category, as well as one overall winning team. Each car has teamed up with 5 other ones in the different plateaus. This means that every car bearing a given number in a grid can make its team win. So of course the drivers follow closely the results of their fellow teams in each race. In the early hours of Sunday morning, the rain stops for a magical moment, but that break is short-lived. Around breakfast time, the thunderstorm breaks again. The audience members try to find refuge under an umbrella or in a driver's lounge. Time to watch the raindrops fall and admire the courage of the drivers who keep going, no matter how drenched. The last race of the pre-war period plateau ends in a terrible downpour with visibility below 5 meters. While the drivers fight against the elements, let us hop on the time machine. After all, Le Mans Classic is an ongoing journey across history. This is probably what German driver Albert Otten is thinking when he brings his shiny BMW 328 to the third position of the Grid 1 standing. In 1939, when this car was built, an identical car won in its category in Le Mans and came 5th in the overall classification. At the time, the 328 had also won the Alpine Rally and the Mille Miglia competition. Christian Traber finished second with his Talbot Lago, a former single-seater. In 1950, the Rosier father and son had won the competition with a similar car. The winners of this plateau are British, Birch and Burnett on the 1931 Talbot 105. During the first race, the average speed reached an impressive 133 kilometers per hour. In Plateau 2, the final victory plays out between British cars. Alex Duncombe flies over the first 2-1 with his Jaguar Type D, but on Sunday morning under the rain he makes a mistake and loses all hope to reach the top ranks. In the end, another Jaguar wins the Grid 2 competition. Just like in the old days, the brand has overpowered the competition. Finber and Newell as the winners on 1953 Jaguar. Let us now look a bit closer at this 1962 Alfa Romeo Giulietta SC. Behind the wheel, two brothers, François Fillon, France's former prime minister, shares the wheel of a Bizzarini 5300 GT with his brother Pierre in Plateau 4. We could say that automobile is part of the Fillon DNA and family culture. Our whole family is into motorsports. Our grandfather was. We've never stopped doing it and we hope to stop as late as possible. Is it special for you to team up with your brother? We've always done it that way. He's usually a bit faster than I am and that irritates me. But we have fulfilled a dream, riding together on two cars, including an Alfa Romeo Bizzarini. When you ride these cars on this track with a Ford GT or a Porsche against you, all these cars that you dreamt about when you were a kid, it's really an exceptional feeling. In Plateau 3, Dutch driver Karsten Leblanc steps on the podium with his Austin Healey 3000 DD 300, a 1960 factory model. The second position goes to this Ferrari 250 GT Berlinetta. And the final victory of Plateau 3 after 3 rounds goes to Pearson, Harris and the Jaguar D. Plateau 4 drivers have also enjoyed their classic Le Mans style start, but under the rain at the beginning of their last race on Sunday. The circuit is very tricky and quite a few cars go spinning on the wet track, but fortunately this causes no serious damage. On the podium of the 62-65 plateau, we find the iconic cars of the period. On the third step, the Jaguar E Coupé of La Journade and Aubry. On the second step, Michel Lecourt and his Shelby Cobra of 1964. And the final victory goes to the very experienced Hans Rugenholz. The Dutch driver has taken part in several editions of the 24 Hours and is now a historic car racing leader at the wheel of his Ford GT40.
Well, there's always something new. The conditions are always different. Today we had a race in the rain, very, very slippery. But I knew where I was in the total classification, so I could take it easy. So being on the podium, fantastic.
The sun finds its way through the clouds for the last two races. On the starting green of Plateau 5, we meet up with Jacques Nicolet. It's a car with a beautiful history that competed in Le Mans with Guy Ligier and Patrick Depailler. When I sit in the car, I can instantly feel the weight of this story. Being part and parcel of the Ligier revival at the 24 Hours this year, Jacques Nicolet could not drive another car than this JS3 from 1971, a Ligier prototype that used to be driven by the late Patrick Depailler. The beautiful JS2 was also on the starting grid of Plateau 6. This car boasts the best results in Le Mans, with the second place in 1975 thanks to Lafosse and Chasseuil. Another member of the French delegation is the Matra 670. Shared by Richard Mille, Romain Dumas and Yvan Mahé, this machine left its mark on the history of racing cars with the unforgettable sound of its V12 engine. Matra is also remembered for his unchallenged dominance in Le Mans between 71 and 74. Gérard Larousse was part of this adventure. In 73, when I won, the crowd was on the track. I had a lot of trouble protecting the poor Matra from the crowd. It was really sensational. 73, 74, Larousse and Pescarolo are the kings in Le Mans, and Jean-Luc Lagardère had been waiting for a French victory since 1950 in the 24 Hours. Let's face it, motorsports are a male affair, but one look at the participants list of Le Mans Classic 2014 shows that no less than 24 women drivers are part of the adventure this year. When you drive this kind of car, you're always watching the indicators, the temperature for instance, to make sure that everything is okay. It can always be a bit dangerous for the car, and we always keep a bit of leeway to stay as safe as possible. Corentine Quignot is one of these 20 drivers. She's experienced and masters the subtleties of the game better than many of her competitors, with a touch of charm to boot. She knows every detail of her Chevron B16 by heart. The Chevron is a very powerful car in historic races, as well as the Lola T70. At the time, these machines were considered outsiders, but their simple and rigorous design means that they are much easier to maintain and to use in cars competitions now than some of the prototypes developed at the time. This year at Le Mans Classic, Chevron snatches the top 4 spots of the Plateau 5 standing, with the final victory going to another Dutchman called David Hart. The sun is definitely back to conclude Le Mans Classic 2014. The paddock is brimming with activity once again. Le Mans Classic pays tribute to the first paid leave in France, which are remembered as the first traffic jams on the famous nationalities. With many more activities and souvenir shops in the village, there is no time to get bored. History and modernity go hand in hand at Le Mans Classic.
Just about to begin.
One last visit in the Demon Drome, and it's time to return to the track towards the climax of the weekend, the last race of Plateau 6. Roald Goethe is truly passionate and owns no less than 30 racing cars, painting a special sky blue and orange like the Mirage GR7.
Oh, every time we come here, look. I like the open cars. We've got obviously a few closed cockpit cars, but I personally like the open cars to be in touch with the elements. And the GR7 is actually the first time we're racing it. This car, since 1978, hasn't raced. We've tested it, but it's the first race for this particular chassis since 1978.
This German collector keeps alive the legacy of John Wyer, the founder of the Mirage brand with Rondeau, the only independent manufacturer who ever won the 24 hours after the war. This year, the Mirage also gets the gold medal of Plateau 6, with owner Chris McAllister behind the steering wheel. Number 2 of Grid 6 is Portuguese driver Carlos Bardo on a Lola T280. And to complete the final podium at Le Mans Classics, the car with the most unusual decoration, the Porsche 935 K3 Kremer of Nicolas Dieteren. Jochen Mass won the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1989, driving a Sauber Mercedes. At Le Mans Classic 2014, he went for a 911 RSR. At 5 p.m. on Sunday, the 7th edition of Le Mans Classic came to a close, a real success for the audience and an athletic performance for all the drivers who enjoyed this exceptional event. The overall winning team is number 12, that is, all 6 cars with the number 12 in the different categories. Sheldon's Chevron in Plateau 5, the Lola T292 of Yules, Catlow and Sinclair in Plateau 6, the Ford GT40 of Hogenholtz, who made a key contribution to this team victory, Chris Lown's very rare and beautiful 1958 listed Jaguar Nobly. In Plateau 2, the iconic Jaguar Type D of Monteverde, Pearson, Smith and Twyman. And finally, the Talbot 105 of Burton Burnett. All these drivers are rewarded, as they should, on Sunday evening. We must now wait 2 years before this unique weekend of racing joy returns. Patrick Vetter promised us that the 2016 edition of Le Mans Classic would be even more spectacular. Vetter Auto is all about all cars, but always with an innovative touch.